Good afternoon and welcome to the Problem with Being Awake. My name's Ben. Let's have a conversation. Now, the topic is trans women in sports, which is everybody's, debate at the moment. And I don't see it as a debatable thing. But let me make this point. We're so messed up in this world with pandering to the transgender community that the Olympic gold and silver female boxing champions are both biological males who got there by beating up female boxers who are much shorter, much weaker, and much less able to defend themselves. There was one Italian woman who had to quit after 40-something seconds because she'd never been hit that hard remotely in her boxing life, and she was representing her country. So, of course, all of the women who got destroyed by these men, they would have been perfectly able to have a decent competition, but they weren't allowed it because these two men were allowed in who have male chromosomes, who were born a male. Now, that means 20 to 25% advantages in almost all sporting reality, in terms of stride length, in terms of strength, in terms of how hard they hit balls, how hard they punch. The bone density is much stronger, about 25% there. Reflex is 25% quicker. We talk about fairness in sports, but this is the most unfair thing ever. I've just witnessed today they gave a man called Barbara in England a female footballer of the year award, and when he stood up, he's about 6'2", flat chested, still probably got his appendage, and he looked like he should be playing in the Premier League for men. But obviously not. He wasn't good enough, so he changed to being a woman. How many people are making that decision based on the financial means? Because you can go from number 250 seed in tennis in male tennis, and if you go into female tennis, you're going to be number one. So there is now an incentive for people to do these things, which I think is extraordinarily corrupt and goes right in the face of fairness itself. And one thing that the transgender movement has made very clear is they have no respect for women. And the society that's entertained all of these ideologies, this broken, woke mind virus ideology, transmania, as I call it, but there's also woke mania. It's the people who we're pandering to are such a small part of the society that we live in. But yet we pander to them to the greatest amount. 50% of people are women, and women's rights are being eroded day by day by day with this thing. They have, anybody who supports this can't have female children. It would be impossible to support something so horrendous, because you don't want a man in a locker room pretending to be a woman, and you've got many evidences of that being sexual predatory nature. There's not been any rapes in female changing rooms. There's been loads. The evidence is just remarkable that they even debate the issue as if it's an issue. One, we should stop teaching gender studies and CRT, and we should just teach people how to racially hate everybody, especially white people. That's what CRT does in schools. And then you confuse young, impressionable minds with gender theory and transgender story hour. And the books they put in kids' libraries are hardcore porn, trying to get them more assessed. If they raise a concern about anything, if a female raises concerns about a trans male naked in their locker room, it is almost certain that in every situation that woman will be banned from that gym or banned from wherever or sacked if it's at work, because everyone wants to pander to that small proportion of people who are transgender. Now, the actual proportion of people who have gender dysphoria has not changed for 40 years. It's about 0.004% at its highest estimate. It could go down to the lowest estimate, 0.00041%, which is 5 digital points below a percent. And now we've got, in Western culture, I'm going to take the most conservative estimate I can, we've got 1% of people identifying as trans. That's impossible scientifically. And it is not a probable answer, or it's entirely improbable to say that people were coming out as trans who had felt that more, but it had been stigmatized. And that if you don't give them their gender affirming therapy, which we invented when we started doing it to kids who are prepubescent with puberty blockers that will leave them infertile for life, and the surgery that means they'll never experience sexual pleasure, and they haven't gone through puberty yet. And that's the only way you can know about your sexuality and then your gender identity. Up until 2019, when the World Health Disorder very, very strangely declassified it as a mental health disorder with no evidence and no reason for it. That's in 2019. How big of an issue is it now in 2024? That was Pandora's box they opened, and they did it on purpose. And the NGOs who run gender clinics, who run the gender activists, they were the ones who pushed the money through. And it's destroying, our children, of course. And it's insane that we're giving them the whole, in terms of the entire process, puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and the sex change, which is successful only 1 in every other attempt. So 1 in 2 need to be redone. In medical terms, we accept 1 in 14 needing to be redone as our lowest thing. But for an elective surgery, 1 in 2 works. And they assume that women should be on board with this entire movement. And if not, they've now labelled them TERFs. And, they can attack them as they have. I mean, J.K. Rowling was the famous first one, but there have been many. Riley Gaines is getting so much abuse from the trans community. And it's a minority that likes to abuse other people and bully their way into the spotlight. It didn't used to be with the old trans people who fought for trans rights. That was just about going between a boy and a girl. Now we had got 464 genders, or whatever the current number is, and it's all gone screw loose. And I think it's the most dangerous thing that we could be doing for women is, one, in boxing, allowing a male to box a female. What is wrong with the world when that's allowed? It's not only allowed, it's supported, and it comes with an Olympic gold medal at the end. What the hell's going on? Now, there is one debate here, and one debate only. If you were born a man, you stay in the men's room. Okay? Even if you've transitioned, if you're 6'3", you can easily go into the men's room and use a cubicle in the men's room. If you were born a woman, you go in the woman's room. There is a slight problem there if you were born a woman but have become a male and have some sort of penis. But again, I think that's fair to say you would then use a stool. You look like a woman. But we can't have people with penises in locker rooms and changing rooms and toilets with women in them. It's an open season for every sexual predator to take on, say, I feel like a woman. And that's all it takes. I feel like a woman. And suddenly everything empties for them. And yep, everything they want, it gets acquiesced to. And I can tell you one thing, being a woman is much more than just a thought. So just because you think you're a woman does not make you one in any way, shape or form. It means you have a psychological mental health disorder that makes you think that way. And that's only if you really do. That 1% from 0.004 is people who don't really feel that, or there could be some allowance for it being installed through the teaching of queer studies and gender studies that it's indoctrinated and brainwashed from young minds who didn't know better, and they're challenging their own gender. That's going to be a part of it. But there's a bigger component of people who are just latching on for cultural reasons, to be popular, all sorts. They have no intention of going through the full surgery. And there are many bad actors in every aspect of that who are abusing women and abusing female rights. When did trans rights top female rights? We really need to look at ourselves as a society in the Western world. The last Olympics was the Trans Olympics, and they made that, they offended the entire Catholic and Christian faith by making that grotesque piece that was supposed to represent the Last Supper, and it had French revolutionaries in it, which was basically the message: we don't like your old traditions, we don't care, we're revolutionaries. No, you're not. You're just mentally ill. Okay? I have a mental health disorder. It's called PTSD. Occasionally it rears its ugly head. Not often. I've had it for 22 years. But I have to manage it sometimes. Having a mental health disorder is not as big a stigma anymore. And so many people suffering yearly. More than 50% in most Western countries, people suffer yearly with mental health related problems that need medication and therapy. Whether they take the therapy is different, but the medication, yes. So we are rewarding this behaviour when, in fact, it's a mental health disorder, and it always should have stayed that way. And a great example is Caitlyn Jenner or Blair White. I'm happy to call them female, because they went through it before it was trendy. And, you know, he is, Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner, now Caitlyn, formerly Bruce, was an Olympian himself. And the idea of men transitioning into women and competing in women's sports, he finds abhorrent. And you've got Blair White, who is a conservative trans woman, really good social media. She's funny, she's charismatic, but she was born into that world where it was all about just changing sex. And in that time, 85% of people who presented with gender dysphoria, with the right therapy and the understanding of the procedure, choose to stay in the same body. That's been true for 40 years. 85% plus, most of whom, or almost all of whom, enter same-sex relationships. So their confusion was that they were gay. Now, there's nothing wrong if our kids turn out gay. And by the way, gay people aren't just necessarily on the left and supportive of all this. There's plenty of gay conservatives who are not supportive and don't feel anything towards the movement anymore because they've been taken over by the 2S LGBTQIA plus infinity sign members, or the alphabet people as we call them. And all of that is brand new. That's come since they declassified the mental health disorder. But we've still got this debate about should men be allowed to compete in women's sports. But all of the empirical evidence says absolutely no, not a chance in hell. Why are we even talking about it? That's what the evidence suggests. Why is this even a discussion? Should men be allowed to prey on women in their private spaces? The answer empirically is, have people been raped in that situation? Yes, they have, because of the changes in the way we look at culture. So that's the argument and that's the evidence. So the evidence is, no, it's not a good thing. I mean, Tim Walz spent $41.5 million on putting tampons into male bathrooms and boys' restrooms. And I would just say, why not wait for the first confirmed ever male period? Because no one's ever had one now. If you're bleeding down there and you're a man and the ambulance come in, they don't check to see if you've had a period because no one has. And men can't get pregnant. Now, in the future, whether they can artificially create eggs, a womb, a uterus, I don't still see how that fits inside the male body, because we don't have a spare. We can't just chunk all of our internal organs up a bit. That would kill us. So it's highly unlikely a man will ever be pregnant, but certainly it's not possible now. But people believe it is, and they have this horrible argument. Follow the science. That's their argument. Follow the science. Follow the science. Follow the science. And they're talking about the American Psychological Association, who's bent as hell. WPATH, who the leaked files from the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, who'd advised every Western gender clinic, showed them to be fraudulent, lying about their experience, lying about the results, and knowing full well the negatives, that it can kill, it can cause 2 types of cancer and 3 other fatal illnesses. And that's if you're unlucky. If you're lucky, it's just going to have some nasty side effects for the rest of your life. So, it's if you don't do the puberty blocker thing and you reinstate that everyone has to be 18 to transition medically, then you have a different situation. Okay, 1, they're not infertile forever, and 2, there's much more that can be done to actually, give them a sex organ that works, so they can experience sexual pleasure, fall in love, have relationships. What's happening now is not letting these kids have the opportunity of having relationships and children moving forward. And it's a horrible thing to do to anybody under the age of 18, because their brains are still like sponges. Your brain develops in 7 year cycles, 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21. Those are the most important 3. In that time, your brain is a sponge, and the younger you are, the more sponge-like you are. So the more any adult tells you something, the more likely you are to just believe it without questioning. And the flip side to that is, if people who make those decisions when they're older, they have less of a horrendous experience. They have a much more developed overall body, which means that they can actually do better surgery, and it's more successful if you're 18. But in this gender affirming care, we invented that nice word because it ends in care. It's just been placed into the sexual abuse category in Minnesota. So if a parent doesn't immediately agree with their 10-year-old saying, I want to be a boy or a girl, when they're the opposite, the state can immediately take custody of that kid for the rest of their lives, put them through the gender grind mill, activists, surgeons, out the other side. And if they want to see their parents again, they can. But part of this cultish idea and this new transmania actually really does push people away from their parents. So you can't make a full transition unless you get away from your old life. And I know people who've lost kids to this. We're currently losing one in my family. It's not okay. It's not sane. It's not represented by any mainstream psychology, and every mainstream psychology is against it. Wokeism and transgenderism and this entire cult, this new cult of climate alarmists and all of these people, they have screws loose, and we shouldn't be bending towards people who are mentally ill and making big policy decisions based on that. So it's okay to be trans. It's also okay not to have to announce your identity every time you find a new one, because you get a bit boring after a while. It's like Sam Smith. Fine, he came out as gay. No one had an issue there. No worries. I mean, we're in a culture that accepts gay people all the time. Very few people I know now would be homophobic. I really don't think I know anyone. And if I did, I'd rebuke them massively for it. But, the idea is just it's now unhinged. And, these people have underlying mental health disorders. Of the children who've transitioned, the vast, vast majority of them had more than one underlying mental health problem. And in the WPATH leak files, which you'll find if you can find Michael Schellenberger's website, he's changed it now. It used to be environmentalprogress.org, but he's changed it. He broke these files, and there's a video of one of the directors of WPATH trying to convince another surgeon that the person he highlighted as maybe being schizophrenic and having a multiple personality may not know at all what's going on around them. And the advice from all the directors was, did they sign the consent form? He said, yes. Did the parents sign the consent form? He said, yes. He said, well, you do it then. It's not your responsibility. And he goes, no, but ethically, I don't feel it's like, doesn't matter. They've signed. Ethically, it's up to them. If they signed, that's what they get. And they pushed this guy into doing this surgery on somebody who didn't know what was going on around them. It's madness and it's sickness. I'm going to bring it back to the fact that the final of the female boxing Olympics was fought out by two men, and one of them won gold and one of them won silver. So gold and silver place at the Olympics female boxing was given to two men who beat up girls much smaller and weaker than they were. The world's gone mad. It needs to stop. I'll leave it there. Always good to have a long form discussion. Please leave comments and things and likes and subscribers and all the YouTube jazz if you liked it. And any comments you want to add. And I'll be lucky this week. You can be good. And I'll see you soon.